evening, Words and Whimsy. Thank you so much for joining us. We are so excited to be here on this Tuesday evening talking with Lauren Thoman about her new book, I'll Stop the World. Lauren, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Glad to be here.
We are so excited that we get to chat with you. Your book was fantastic, which we will get to talk about plenty a little bit later in the chat. But for now, for any of our members who might not be familiar with you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I live in Nashville, Tennessee. Well, outside of Nashville, Tennessee. I have 2 teenagers. I have 2 dogs, plus whatever fosters I happen to have in my house at the time. I graduated from college with a music education degree, which I used briefly and then realized I did not want to use. I write pop culture articles for various online outlets because I have a lifelong obsession with movies and television. And I'll Stop the World is my first novel, and I put into it a lot of the things that I like. So, and also we have a weird number of fish tanks in this house. And whatever you think a normal number of fish tanks is, we have at least twice that many. So
Do they all have fish?
They do. And the fish are constantly rotating. But this was my husband's pandemic hobby. Some people made sourdough. We got a lot of fish tanks. So, everyone has their thing, and that's our thing.
I got a lot of dogs. I got smart lights through my entire house because
I did that too, but they hate me. There are literally rooms in this house that I cannot turn the lights on and off in because they are only on smart switches and there are no actual switches for them. And the smart switches hate me. They don't like me at all. It's great.
Our Google Home definitely hates me because sometimes it starts talking to me in German. And I don't speak German.
No, you're just like, nine.
Yeah. The problem is that my husband speaks a little bit of German. And so I suspect that he is like, when I'm not home, teaching Google, to respond to me in German somehow. I'm convinced this is happening. He probably would say I'm wrong, but.
We have an Alexa. I can't say it out loud because then
because it'll listen
and she'll know. But sometimes my husband will say the command and it will do the thing. And then I will repeat it verbatim in the same room, like in the living room. He'll be like, Alexa, turn on the living room lights, and she'll do it. And then I say that and she's like, turning on the bonus room fan. And I'm like, I said the same thing you did. What? She hates me. She hates me.
Yep.
So I thought the smart home was nice. And then I realized that smart homes have feelings and they cannot like you. And I kind of want to go back to a dumb home.
Yeah, it's really, really true. The biggest way that I have made it through is my husband got me like a little remote that will, if
we do
it's
have
really
a remote
not listening, he's like, just use that. Because I think he got tired of me being mad.
Yeah. But then sometimes it will like disappear and like my husband will just come in to keep me like yelling at the room and like looking under the couch cushions. I'm like, I just want the fan on. That's all I want.
Is it so much?
Why does it hate me so much? So yeah, I would like to go back to analog times. Maybe that's why I wrote a book about someone time traveling from now to the 80s when there was nothing smart. Nothing was smart.
We're unlocking a whole lot just like 5 minutes in. I love it.
Right? Yeah. Maybe it was my therapy.
Yep.
I really do think that a lot of writing is just therapy.
I feel like you're not the first author who's expressed something similar. Yeah.
So we got to find a way to work out our issues. I mean, real therapy is expensive. Like
it is. And there's just not enough therapists. So
there are not. I mean, I love my therapist, but I cannot see her as often as I sometimes feel like I need to, whereas I can put fictional characters through all sorts of ridiculousness as often as I want to. So
exactly. And get as ridiculous as you want to.
Coping mechanisms. I mean, I say this as I'm squeezing my little bug-eyed dragon down here. Like,
oh yes.
This
Um,
was my Christmas it was a stocking stuffer, and I don't know what this says about Santa and my relationship with him that this was in my stocking. My
it
little
is
bug-eyed
amazing,
stress dragon.
and I think Santa knows that maybe you needed, little,
Yeah,
something for stress maybe.
yeah. Sometimes I mean, did you see the movie Violent Night this past year with David
Yes,
Harbour as
yes.
very, very angry Santa? Like, I
Mhm.
felt like that movie spoke to me a little bit,
Yes.
and maybe this is David Harbour Santa is what put this in my stocking, I think.
It was an instant, like, I'm going to be watching this at
Oh,
Christmas,
yeah.
like, in future years. It's getting
Oh,
added to the
absolutely.
roster for sure.
Oh, yeah. No, we were in the theater like, "Yes, this is gonna be on the rotation." Mhm,
Yep,
100%.
it was a
Just
good
our
one.
Christmas angst. Sometimes you need angsty Christmas.
Exactly. But also before we went live, we were talking about another, what some people may call a coping mechanism, AKA, pets. So,
Mhm.
will you tell the viewers a little bit about, the menagerie of animals you have in your house? Obviously, you mentioned the fish tanks.
Yeah, so many fish. That's more my husband's thing. We had a little Shih Tzu for like 15 years, and he passed right at the end of 2019. And so we went into the pandemic with 0 dogs, and it felt wrong. It felt very wrong because 'cause we'd had a little dog for so long, and so we adopted a dog, that year in June, and she's around here. She may or may not come jump up on my chair because she likes to sit right behind me, and she's our well, not our little, but, lab Aussie boxer
Mhm.
collie, some sort of mutt. We got the DNA test, and it's like you have a little bit of all the smart herding dogs, and so um, she has a lot of feelings and a lot of smarts, and dogs with lots of feelings and lots of intelligence are a little bit of a high maintenance combo. Um,
Mhm.
so we got her at the beginning, or midway through 2020, and then we got a little Shih Tzu in 2021. A year later, he just turned 2 yesterday. He's around here somewhere too. Um, and um, then we were like, why stop at 2? So then we started fostering. And so we have just sort of this rotating door of dogs. Our first foster was weird. We got these 2 strays. It was a mother-daughter stray, and we wound up having them for 20 months. We were told we would have them for 5 weeks. We had them for 20 months. And um they were a lot. If you ever want to like just go through a life lesson in unpredictability, like bring in some stray foster dogs. You have absolutely no idea what you're dealing with. But then after that, we were like, well, we would like to foster more, maybe not for 20 months at a time. So we just have them in and out. Now we mostly do puppies, because puppies, we get them when they're too little to be adopted. So we get like a couple of puppies from the same litter at a time, and
Mhm.
just sort of get them through those few weeks between when they're big enough to go into like leave their mom,
Mhm.
but too small to be adopted
Mhm.
individually yet. And so right now, we just got in today. We got 2 little yellow labs. Um, they have rescue assigned names, but we decided we're going to call them Peanut and Pickles, and um, it just felt right. So Peanut and Pickles are in sleeping right now in their little house. They have a little enclosure, and we'll have them for a couple weeks. They're 7 weeks old. They can be adopted when they're 9 weeks. So yeah, so this is how we scratch our puppy itch, even though we have 2 of our own puppies. Is we'll bring them in, we'll keep them for a couple weeks, and then we send them on their journey. And hopefully won't have another year and a half long situation.
That is just I mean, I am floored. That is just such a great difference in time. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah, now we just have dogs always. We're just constantly like there's it's weird to be in a house that doesn't have dogs at this
mhm.
point because we just are drowning in them always.
That definitely makes sense. Um, one thing that, if members don't know, Mindy Kaling has started a book imprint,
Mhm.
and you are the first book that has been published under her imprint. So how
Well, I am the second. I'm the
Oh,
first
the
debut.
second.
I'm the
Oh, the
first
first that's
debut,
right,
second
thank you.
overall.
The first debut,
Mhm.
yes. Bu but how crazy has that been? Have you gotten to
Um,
work directly with Mindy?
no, not directly. She did read my book. She, she had a say in the acquisition of my book, and she passed along notes through my editor on the book itself, and then on cover design and that sort of thing. So anytime we thought like we would work something out between me and my editor, then she'd say, okay, but also Mindy has to sign off on this. And so it always had to go through the Mindy approval process. But I have not met her. I have not talked directly to her. I've been told that eventually this could happen. But she's very busy. And so the stars have not quite aligned in that way yet. But I mean, it is like she has done some promotional videos about my book. She has endorsed them on her social media, and she wrote an introduction to the book that's printed. It's right at the very beginning, and obviously, her name's on it. So, yeah, so I definitely like that part's been really cool, little surreal to have the Mindy Kaling seal of approval and endorsement. Um, but I have not yet gotten to like become best friends with her as I would like to do. Um,
There's
but
time.
yeah, no, I'm like, there is still time in life, and
Wait.
who knows? Who knows at what point our best friend journey shall start?
Exactly. I mean, she's obviously, got her hands in a lot of movie and TV work as well, so there's
Mhm.
certainly continued opportunity there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, and I think shows that are, like Yellow Jackets, it's out right now, they've proven that a dual timeline can be very successful.
It's true. It's true. And I mean, I love me some Yellow Jackets. So,
It's
and The
super
Wilds, which not nearly enough people saw, but it's it is the Amazon answer to Yellow Jackets. They came out at the same time.
Really?
They're both about, yeah. I'm gonna like just keep plugging the show that was canceled after 2 seasons, but they're both about this group of teenage girls that are stranded after a plane crash. And
What?
Yellow Jackets took off, and the Wilds did not. They're different in their executions, but yeah, we were really into the Wilds. We watched it for 2 seasons. It's kind of the Wilds is a little more like Lost, and Yellow Jackets is a
Oh.
little more Lord of the Flies.
Mhm, mhm.
Um, but both of them started with like a group of teenage girls in a plane crash. Like, what did they do? And we were like, yes, give us all of these shows. And only one of them like became like this major sensation. But both of them are worth watching.
Crazy. Yeah, I will definitely, I usually don't care, even if a show was canceled, if it sounds interesting, I'll still watch it.
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't care.
I do not regret watching those 2 seasons.
Mhm.
It does not resolve things, but I was like, no, that was 2 seasons of good TV.
But it's still
I was into it.
enjoyable.
Yes,
I mean, that probably goes to show just what a difference marketing can make.
it's true. And I mean, you never, who can predict the zeitgeist? Like,
It's very true.
like things are gonna take off, and like who's to
Yeah,
say why? Um,
exactly.
so I don't know. It doesn't hurt the Yellow Jackets has like all these like wonderful like 90s actresses in it too,
True.
though. That I
Yes.
mean, it's like, oh, it's got Christina Ricci and like
Right.
like
And Melanie
and Melanie
Linsky.
Linsky, who I love in everything.
Mhm.
Everything. I was telling my husband
Yes.
recently. I was like, I think she's just like an auto watch actor for me. I think no matter what she's in, I'm like, oh, she's in it, I'm watching it. It's gonna be
Yep.
good.
Yep.
Yeah.
Did you watch, The Last of Us? And
Yes.
yes, she was
Hmm.
fantastic in her episodes there.
Fantastic and so awful. And
Mhm,
yet, like, I was
mhm.
like, man, you are a horrible, horrible person. But I
Right.
like cannot look away. Like,
Exactly. But I love you so much. I still love you
but
so much.
yeah, but also like I get it. I get it. She makes me
Yes.
get it.
Yep.
Like, no higher praise that can I give than an actor that I'm like, I disagree with literally everything you're doing, but I get it.
But I am here to
Yeah.
support you. Mhm.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like, "Oh, no, I wish you wouldn't have done that," but, right, it tracks,
Yep.
but, oh, babe, no. No.
I'm just flashing through so many different scenes now in my head that I can
Yeah,
think of that
yeah.
fit that.
Let's just stop talking about the book. Let's talk about Melanie Linsky.
There we go. Okay, I thought this would be a good time to throw in because we were talking about the Mindy thing, there's the
Yeah,
little Mindy seal on here. This
it
is the
gets a
cover
little yeah,
for
sticker
everyone.
and everything.
Yep.
Mhm.
And this is fun fact, everyone, a giveaway copy that we have of the book. So after the chat, either tonight or tomorrow morning, depending on when I do it, you will see a giveaway post go up. So you can just watch for that to know how you can enter to
And
win
is
your
that
own. It's a finished hardcover copy, everybody. So,
I was gonna say, is that the hardcover? You should take
yep.
off the dust jacket and
Oh,
show the
yes.
beautiful
Yes. Thank you for reminding me.
it's just
Yep.
so pretty.
Right? And oops, there we go. And I just love like I'm weird and like when a font feels really on brand to me, I just love it so much. And in this case, this font just feels so perfectly 80s.
I need to I was literally thinking earlier today, I was like, I need to contact my my publisher and be like, "What is the name of that font?" Because I can't find it. I can find things that are close to it. It's probably printed in there, right? You're gonna tell me right
Yep,
now.
now I'm gonna look
I
and
just
see because sometimes they
haven't
do
even
that little.
and I haven't even thought to look inside my own book and find out what the font is because I keep wondering what it is. Sorry, you
Well,
can hear
there
my
is
dog.
no little like specified page just about the
Okay,
font.
okay. I feel
That's probably
slightly better
yeah.
that I did not.
Yeah, no,
But
you're
yeah, I was
not
thinking, I
missing
was like, I need
anything.
to
That's for
email them
sure.
and figure out what that is.
Yes. It's amazing. Just gonna show the front again. Well, I suppose since we're gonna shift into talking about the book.
Mhm.
What was the cover design and the whole cover process like for you?
Well, that was all the I mean, I almost like the amount of influence I had was so minuscule, like that I don't even know why I'm saying almost. Like that was the art department. They asked me to give them some examples of covers I liked, and so I did. And then they were like, "No, not like that." And I was like, "Okay, so what are you thinking?" Um, and they created a couple of different concepts for me that I looked at. And there was this one, which the biggest difference with this one um, between what we have now and what they originally sent me was originally the colors were lighter. It was much more like almost pastelly neon
Ooh,
versus the
okay.
dark.
Uh-huh.
Um, and then also there was no rain. The rain actually was on a different cover concept that I had. Like I gave notes on both covers, and this one I just was like, I think the colors are too light, and
Mhm.
also I wish it had. And I had a couple other options where they were like, that's too many things you're wanting to put on this book cover, and I was like, this is why I'm not a graphic designer. And then the other one I had like this whole slew of notes, and they were like, maybe the actual interpretation of this is you don't like this cover. But the other cover had this rain effect on it that I was like, well, what if we put that on this one? And so those are the biggest changes between what they sent me and what we wound up with is the rain and the colors being darker than what I was originally given. But I mean, they came up with the whole concept themselves, and I think it's just so great. I think it's so 80s, and I think it so captures the book. And then I had absolutely no idea that the actual like hardcover itself, like under the book jacket, was going to be the pink with the yellow rain on it. Like that was a total surprise that I had absolutely no idea they were doing until I got my box of author copies and I opened it up and like looked at that and I was like, "Oh, look what they did. Like
Oh,
this is so nice."
oh,
So
awesome.
I can take like such a minuscule amount of credit as to be insignificant on the cover.
I will say though, just, as someone who has read the book, I think that the rain on the cover is important. I think that it makes
Mhm.
a difference in terms of the overall story, and also, I think if the book had been those lighter colors, I think I would've like, the vibe of the cover wouldn't have matched the description of the book enough.
Mhm.
It would have felt a little, like, disjointed. My take, I guess, but, like, having read the book, I think this is perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, I really, really love it now. It's funny because based on the original covers I sent them when I was like, "I like these," and they were like, "No." I was like, "Oh, well, then what are you gonna come up with?" So it was very different than what I was originally picturing. Like,
Mhm.
I think I had a very, like, more illustrated cover in my mind,
Oh, okay.
just because I that's kinda what I tend to pick up. But then when I saw it, I was like, "Okay, this is why I'm not the person in charge of this. Like, this is better."
I can relate to that a lot. I'm like, I when I see something that's pretty, I'm like, "Oh, that's awesome." I can't put it together
No, no, I would not have conceptualized it,
that way.
which is why I'm a writer and not a graphics person in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah. Well, let's, dive into, talking more about the book. So can you tell us a little about the story and, what inspired it for you?
Um, so and it's so funny because like now that we have like cover copy and everything, I'm like, okay, I've got to say a thing that I originally wrote to be more of a reveal in the book, but now it's all on the like blurb and everything. So I'm like, okay, I guess I can just say it. Um, So, I'll Stop the World is about a modern teenager who, um, after a series of poor choices, finds himself inexplicably transported back to the year 1985, in which he must then team up with a 1985 teenager to, I mean, what he really wants to do is get back to his time, and to do that, they think they have to fix something that's wrong in the past. And what they assume that is that a week from when he arrives back in 1985, his grandparents are mysteriously killed. And so he figures he has to figure out like, why they were killed and prevent it before it happens. And so it's a mystery, it's a time travel story. It's a lot about friendship and identity and um, small town intersections and the way that the decisions we make impact the people around us. And um, yeah, and I wrote it because I started writing it during a period in which I was working with my agent on trying to sell other books that did not sell, as this is my debut. So I feel like that's kind of implied there. Um, and was really kind of feeling like I was like hitting my head against a wall with these other books. Hold on. My dog is like barking nonstop outside at the dog next door, whose name is Mabel, and he very much wants to hang with Mabel. And she does, and but if they ever actually got together, he doesn't want to. He just wants to bark at her, and I need my child to go get him. Because you can't hear him, but I can, and he's just his little bark is so high pitched. Um, uh, so I signed with my agent in 2014, and we submitted numerous projects together, and it just was never quite the right fit at the right time for publishing. And so, in between, also in 2014, I started working on this time travel book, and the reason was because I love time travel and of all stripes. And I feel like time travel isn't even so much like a genre; it's just like a category that like any genre can fit into. And so I was like, I want to write a time travel book because I love time travel stories of all genres. And like, that's what seems like it'll be fun. That's what'll keep me oh, he couldn't get in. Poor guy. He's rescued now.
Oh,
Um,
good.
and, so, like, okay, so I was thinking about all the different time travel movies and books and TV shows that I loved, and I was like, "What appeals to me about this, and what do I think is the most fun part of it to play with?" And for me, um I was like, well, I'm never really concerned so much with the mechanics of the time travel. I'm much more interested in the like, what do they do when they're there? What is this like fish out of water scenario? And also like the why of it. I feel like not a lot of time travel stories really explore the why. I'm they like there's like Groundhog Day does where
Mhm.
he's like, why am I repeating this day? And he never gets a real answer. He's just kind of theorize and be like, okay, I'm gonna go work on this theory. And um, like Time Traveler's Wife, he's like, I've never figured out why I'm jumping through time. I just do. And like I've kind of come to terms with that. And so that part was really interesting to me is this like why question that's not a time machine. It's not, a wormhole or anything. It's just it happened and the character has to like reckon with, well, what do I do now? And so that was interesting combined with like I love Back to the Future. And so I was like, all right, so Back to the Future, but Marty doesn't have Doc. He doesn't have this why and how component explained. He's just stuck in the past with Back to the Future, it's his parents, but like with his relatives, but they're young, they're like close to his age. Everything's different. And he has to deal with this like existential question of why is this happening to me? I was like, that's interesting. And so I just started playing with that concept. And I mean, this is 2014 when I started, and the book isn't published till 2023. So it actually went through quite a few iterations of what time he traveled to in the 8 years I was writing it, um, because I had to make the years line up to make his age right. And like, I'm like, okay, if he's a teenager now,
Mhm.
then how old was his mom when she had him? Then what age would she have been when she was a baby? Like, when would she have been born? And so originally I had him traveling back to the late six to 1968. And I was like, well, what's happening in 1968 is the Vietnam War. So I was like, oh, maybe he goes to war. And really a very different book than what I wound up with. And it was partially because as time progressed and I still hadn't finished the book, I kept having to revise the time he was going to. And I was like, well, that doesn't work anymore. Um, until finally, when I decided to sit down and like finish the book, I was like, what makes the most sense for him to go to the 80s? Like, it's I have this Back to the Future influence. He needs to go to the year in which Back to the Future is set. And like, and that really is when it kind of all like sort of came together in my head and I wasn't just sort of like throwing, pasta at the wall anymore. Um, but yeah, so it was mostly just my fun side project to keep me sane for a long time, and then it became like, okay, maybe this is actually a book in its own right, and then what does that look like?
Oh, wow. It's hard to I mean, but hard to imagine, and also I can imagine, like, it taking place in a different time period, but the '80s is just so perfect because there's
Hmm.
enough difference in between what the experience is in 2023 versus
Hmm.
1985, but it's not so wildly different that you're like, "What is technology?" You know? Like, I think about Outlander mostly, that's where my mind, went in terms
Hmm.
of it's just wildly different worlds, and it's not,
Hmm.
you don't have that here, and I think that was I liked that they,
Hmm.
the 2 main characters had some sort of, like, similar understanding of things, but then other things that their knowledge was really different on them.
Yeah, and I think with, like part of what I was thinking I was like, when I was thinking about my teenage experience, which I was a teenager in the '90s, but, I was born in the '80s, but I was a teenager in the '90s, and, um, like, what my kids are teenagers now and what they're going through, I was like, "Man, we have a lot of this a lot of very similar experiences, a lot of similar emotions, and, like but the way we navigate them is very different based on, like, right now teenagers, like one of the main ways they engage with their peers is through like social media and texting and technology. And back then it was all very analog. It was like you had to you're face to face or you're like calling each other on your landline and hiding in a closet with the cord stretched all the way so that you have privacy. Like so I was like it was interesting to me to juxtapose those two different things of how teens engage now and how teens engaged back then, yet still going through very similar, like, core experiences.
It's definitely something that, Justin, the main character who, comes he's the one that travels back, to
Mhm,
1985, and he talks about, how different it feels, and how different the, friendships and relationships that people have in 1985 are because they're not
mhm,
in contact 100% of the time. You're not
mhm,
constantly aware what everyone is doing and thinking.
mhm. Yeah, and I mean, for him, like, it's kind of a double-edged sword, that sometimes he's like, "I kinda like that I'm not inundated with knowing everything all the time," and other times he's like, "Okay, so she said, like, 'I'll see you later.' Like, what does that mean? I can't actually check in. Like, is that now? Is that hours from now? Like, I have no idea what this means." And it's like, you know so I'm like, yeah, having to take kid who's used to having like an immediate answer to everything and no way and having all this information to have to back in this time where it's just like you just kind of had to like trust that people would show up or like be okay with your own thoughts, and that's just very very foreign to him.
Yep. There's, without going into spoilers, but one scene in particular in the book comes to mind where he is literally having to just run and sprint to go find someone because that's and
Hmm.
he's so frustrated at like, I need to find this person immediately and I have nothing I can do
Yeah,
to get in
and
contact with
yeah,
them. And so he just has to run.
yeah, and I mean so many times, like I feel like now it's almost challenging to, like, with a story that's set in a modern time, how many times have you, like, watched or read a story where you're like, "Just, like, call them, just text them." Like, why are you having to go everywhere when you could just, like, text and get the answer you need? And it's really hard to kind of keep that feeling of urgency and immediacy in like modern day set stories because we have this technology at our fingertips that you always are having to come up with like reasons around, well, why can't you just Google it? Why can't you just text someone? Why can't you just go on social media and like see where they were? Um, and so uh like he definitely has these thoughts when he's there. He's like, this would be so much easier with Google. This would be so much easier if I had a cell phone. Like I am very frustrated that these things don't exist that would make this whole thing a lot less stressful for me. But at the same time, he even observes, he's like, it's actually because he has ADHD, he has this like constant buzz going on in his brain. To where he does observe too. He's like, it's kind of also nice to not have all of that noise all the time.
Mhm,
Um, and so yeah, just kind of the pros and cons of both ways of living.
mhm. Yeah, that was another thing that I, wanted to, touch on too because, the representation of Justin's experience having ADHD is really, uh, detailed in the book. So can you tell us a little bit about why you wanted to include that, in the story?
Um, I part of it was I really thought when I was thinking through what is interesting for me in this whole like fish out of water scenario, I was thinking through like, okay, well, what don't I want him to be? Like, I don't want him to be a like hobbyist quantum physicist. I don't want him to be someone who's obsessed with time travel. I don't want him to be someone who really who really has all the tools that he might need to get through this. I was like, I want him to be someone that's very unequipped. And so, and in that, I was like, well, to take it kind of one step further than just knowledge, like, what if he's someone that can't think of himself as someone that would ever be able to problem solve or be able to, really deal with a really challenging situation because um, he's used to thinking that he just doesn't he's not built for that sort of thing. And so um, everyone in my family is neurodivergent in some way. We are all dealing with our own various diagnoses, and so I came up with ADHD as like what really seemed to make sense for him because um, I'm very intimately familiar with what that looks like, um, and what that feels like, but also when you so Justin has a diagnosis, but he doesn't have accommodations. He doesn't have tools to really help him with this. He knows he's got this diagnosis, but medication's really expensive, especially if you don't have great insurance, which he doesn't. And accommodations in school, you really have to have a parent advocate that's really fighting for you to get the accommodations you need. And he doesn't have that. And so, and I mean, he's got his counselors who have been telling him, like, if you could just get the accommodations, like, I think you could do better. And he's like, yeah, but I can't. No one here is willing to fight for me. My mom is not willing to, like, so he's just kind of slip through the cracks because we have these systems set up in the US where you can help a kid who is not neurotypical still thrive. Um, but it's not automatic. You really, really have to advocate. And he has no one to advocate for him. And so, because of that, he's gotten to, where he's a senior in high school at the beginning of the book. And he's like, well, I'm just not going to go anywhere in life because, and he doesn't really realize it's because he hasn't had an advocate. He just assumes it's because he's just not good at anything and he can't succeed in anything. And so I thought it would be interesting to take a kid who has kind of been so failed by the system that he grew up in that he believes he has a very low opinion of himself, um, and then put him in a situation where it's not just that he's lacking knowledge, but he's also lacking that self-confidence of, I don't even think I'm capable of solving this problem or rising to this challenge. And then introducing another character who is not willing to accept that as an answer and is like, no, I think you need to push yourself. I think you need to do it anyway. And what the limits of do it anyway are for someone with an executive function disorder, like as he says over and over, he's like, it's not simply a matter of deciding, okay, I need to do this, and then you do it. Like, that's a problem with an executive function disorder is you can know you have to do a thing and you want to do it now and you can want to do it now and still your brain won't let you actually do the thing. And it's a very frustrating thing to feel like you're being sabotaged by your own brain. And, and so I just kind of wanted all the odds to be stacked against him, but him to still figure out a way to be a hero, to have that like main character energy and figure out that there is something special about him just like exactly the way that he is. It's not that there's something wrong with him, it's that he has never really been given a chance to shine. And to sort of learn that about himself and also bring the reader along for someone that's never really thought about like what's it like to have a brain that doesn't let you do the things that you need to do, that doesn't let you prioritize the tasks that are important, but it's like, I should really do this, my whole life may depend on it, I guess I'm going to sit on the couch and watch soap operas, like. And even as he's doing, he's like, why am I doing this? This makes no sense. And it's such a weird thing to have that sort of dual consciousness in your own brain working against you. But, as someone who deals with executive dysfunction and who has family members and friends, I was like, I feel like a lot of us have to figure out coping mechanisms and tools for navigating life with brains that do this to us. And so I wanted to show that it's possible and that it can be possible in like a really profound and beautiful way.
I really appreciated it because I feel like while there's certainly been more mental health sort of representation in books and other media recently, I feel like ADHD and other executive function disorders really haven't been hugely represented, or I guess when I think about people with ADHD on, in media, I think more of little kids,
Mhm.
that are, it's the typical, they're running around crazy, making noise all the time, full of
Mhm.
energy, and not so much, here's what it's like to be a teenager or an adult
Mhm.
experiencing this. So it was nice to see it so, like, clearly on the page represented that way.
Yeah. And it's funny because, like, you're not supposed to read your own reviews, right? But I did. And and I mean, part of putting a book into the world is like once you put it out there, like it's not yours anymore. It's in the hands of the readers. But some of the reviews like got really, really frustrated. They were like, he was just like he would go back and forth and like he'd be motivated and then he wouldn't be and he'd be like doing things and then he'd just stop and it was really frustrating. Like I got really frustrated with him and I was like, and I just kind of you just kind of want to go in the screen and be like, and that's the point. Like he too is frustrated with him, where he's like, I'm very motivated. I believe in myself. And then later he's like, I can't ever do it. Nothing will ever work for me. And I'm like, because that's like what it's like to have your brain working against you. And so not to say like it's a perfect representation, because I mean, obviously everyone's experience
Mhm.
is different. But it's been interesting to see that like cited in reviews as like a problem. They're like, I found this book frustrating because of this. And to me, I was like, that is frustrating. And I guess for you, it's a reason why you couldn't enjoy the book. Um, but for me, sorry, I'm trying to multitask here.
That's
I don't
okay.
know. I have a child asking me, where are your slippers?
So many of our
Um,
viewers will so strongly relate to that mom
and I'm
life.
like, am I wearing them? Are they in here? No. I think they might be in the kitchen. I don't know. I was like, funny that for some people, it's I couldn't even enjoy the book because I was so frustrated by this character just like swinging back and forth. And others, would say like, this is really true to my experience and I appreciated it. Um and I'm like, either way, I'm like, I guess that means I kind of succeeded, but also like it is really frustrating. And I get it. I get why, you could be like, I couldn't root for him. He just drove me up the wall. And it's like, yeah, he also drove himself up the wall.
Yep. Mhm, mhm. No matter how frustrated you felt with him, he felt 100 times more frustrated with himself.
Yeah, like the number of times he's like, do I just give up? No, I can do this. No, I think I just give up. I'm like, yeah, he too finds that cycle extraordinarily frustrating. As does I don't know that I've ever talked to anyone that like understands their own like ADHD or any sort of executive, because depression is an executive
Yep.
dysfunction, anxiety is executive dysfunction. Like anyone that has an executive function disorder, I don't know that I've ever talked to anyone that's like, I'm cool with the way my brain does this. Like it never frustrates me. I'm just like, oh brain, you do you. Like we're just in a period where everything is bad and I can't do anything. And I'm just gonna ride that out until I feel like I can do everything all at once. No one's happy with that.
Yep.
Everyone is frustrated with it.
Yep. Absolutely. And as much as I was happy for Justin about finding his secret love of soap operas, or uh uh or yeah, I just the frustration definitely beats out
Yeah.
even,
Well, and I mean, how many like that was just kind of I'm like, how many people and I think especially with ADHD, because ADHD tends to come with that hyperfixation
Mhm, mhm,
piece. I'm like, that discover a thing that they're like, I'm super into this because they could not do another thing they were supposed to be doing.
mhm.
It's like, well, I didn't do that thing that I wanted to be doing, but I did discover this thing I really like. And now I really am into that thing, which is also going to be a reason why I'm still not doing the thing I'm supposed to be doing. But now I can justify it by being like, but I'm so into this thing now.
This is my new passion.
This is just I mean, this is why we call it narrow spicy, is because it's just like it just continues to add zest while also like
Exactly.
ruining your taste buds a little bit.
It is definitely a seasoning in life that,
Yes.
it goes great on some things and some things not so much.
Yeah, and sometimes you're just like, why did I do this to myself?
Yeah.
This is just like a exercise in suffering, but okay.
So another question about the book I wanted to ask. There are multiple, in addition to there being dual timeline, there's multiple point of views across the chapters in the book. So what was it like writing and keeping the different point of views straight as you were going?
Um, so I kind of default to multiple points of view. Like that's my I I read a lot of like Michael Crichton does it a lot, Stephen King,
Mhm.
Robin Hobb, who wrote my favorite series of all time with her Realm of the Elderlings books. Like in a bunch of those, she does like I think in her live ships book, she has like 11 different POVs. And so that's sort of where my happy place in my brain is. I'm like, I want to hear from everyone. Um, And so, but and that said, though, I originally started this, I was like, it will be one point of view. It'll be just Justin. And then I was like, no, he really needs, and this is after I had him bumbling around doing nothing for quite some time. I was like, he needs a foil. He needs a secondary protagonist that he is interacting with as a main um, thing. And so I was like, okay, it's a dual point of view book. It's two. And then the more I got into it, the more I was like, no, I need more. I need more because the way I want to tell this story is I want to be talking about all the different ways that you affect people without realizing them. And the only way I can do that is if the other characters don't realize it. So I can't tell it from their point of view because they don't realize it. I need it from the character's point of view who are doing the things. Um,
Mhm.
and so they kind of just sort of kept popping up where I was like, oh, you know whose point of view I need? I need this kid. Oh, you know who I need? I need her sister. And like they just kind of kept happening. And once I had my like fleshed out cast, I actually wound up making a spreadsheet and I color coded it by character and I put in all their different scenes so that I could look at it and see like are the, do are these even? Do these flow well? Like do these make sense? And do I have like 3 chapters from a character and then nothing for 20 chapters because that's not going to work. Like and so I'd look at it and be like are these evenly dispersed? Um and then I actually wound up like I had bits and pieces here and there of everyone, but once I had them all like organized, I would actually write one character's POV almost straight through
Oh,
and write their whole arc and then write the next one and the next one because I know how they all fit in together.
mhm.
And I would try to be like keeping in mind where these happen chronologically, like what have we learned in between these scenes, but it it made it easier to kind of stay in their voice to sort of write all the Lisa scenes just consecutively and then all the Sean scenes um and then go back and revise and be like okay do these actually work together and like fix up the parts where I contradicted something that had just happened or um and so yeah that's kind of how I kept it straight and I also never tried to jump back and forth between timelines. I wrote all the modern day stuff and then all the past stuff. And so even though some of it's interspersed throughout, that was actually after I'd written it, and then we kind of rearranged the chapter orders to have them, kind of um, staggered.
Mhm.
Uh, but yeah, it was much easier for me to stay in one character's point of view all the way and then
Mhm.
switch to another one and then braid them together and then clean it all up than it would have been to swap back and forth constantly.
Mhm. That makes sense. I mean, some of the characters have such different experiences and different voices that I can imagine it would be really challenging to try to hop back and forth and stay true to, that character's individual voice.
Yeah, my original inclination was that I was going to do exactly that. I was like, I'm just going to jump around and then I tried to do it and I was like, I can't do this. This is way too complicated.
What do you hope that readers take away from the experience of reading the book?
I mean, the biggest thing that I have been taking away from books, maybe my whole life, but really more in the past few years since I've been much more conscious of it, is like trying to just gain empathy for different experiences, different perspectives. And I mean, I wrote from so many in this book that's, I think, probably the biggest thing is even if a reader were to relate to, one or two characters, they're not going to relate to all of them. Um, and so I would hope that in reading my book, they would consider, because again, it's all about how the things we do, the choices we make, the opinions we hold affect the people around us, whether or not we intend them to. And so would consider those questions of how am I impacting the world around me, but also um, like what am I not considering? What is someone else going through that I haven't really ever thought to consider? Um, and then it also just, the question that Justin's wrestling with through the whole book is this question of like fate or free will of, you know, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Is there a thing I'm supposed to be doing? Like, what does it matter? And I think those are the things we all wrestle with. Without time travel is like, is there a purpose? Am I making the right decisions? How do my decisions affect others? How do my decisions shape my path going forward? Is there a better thing I could be doing? And I think the time travel makes Justin have to be really hyper aware of those questions. Um, but I don't think that they're unique to his situation. I just think that the situation makes him more attuned to them. And so I think I would hope that readers might come away feeling a little more conscientious of being aware of how our decisions might impact others, might impact the world, might have long-term consequences. Um, and then, and yeah, and just also consider, what other people might be going through and why they might be making the decisions they make. And I just would like anything I put into the world to hopefully, in a small part, contribute to creating a more compassionate and empathetic world.
I love that. I think, I mean, I obviously can only speak from my experience, but my experience reading the book, it definitely drew a lot of attention in my mind to you think that something happens because of some,
Mhm.
occurrence or some reason or something, and then you're really only getting a small picture of it. There
Mhm.
could be so much more behind the scenes that you aren't aware of that
Mhm.
snowballed into that situation or whatever. And
Mhm.
just realizing that just whatever your picture of something is not necessarily the whole story. Um,
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, like, that whole like, we think of cause and effect, like, this cause leads to this effect
mhm,
and have it be
mhm.
like a line of one thing leading to
Yep.
another, but really it's just like this, like almost like if you let loose a whole bunch of pinballs in a pinball machine and everything's,
Mhm.
like, bouncing off each other and hitting each other, and,
Yep.
like, without any one of those moving parts, the whole
Mhm.
trajectory would be different.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. Yeah, I think the book does a really good job demonstrating that.
Sorry, a puppy is tunneling under the couch.
Which is very
Hand me a
distracting.
puppy. Hand me a puppy.
Puppy!
I need to show the puppies. Well,
Oh,
just a
yes.
puppy.
I
Here's
know
a
everyone will
puppy.
be good. Oh!
This is
Oh!
Peanut.
Oh,
We're calling the
Peanut!
puppies Peanut and Pickles. This is Peanut.
You are so precious and cute. Oh,
He's like, I was busy trying to get under the couch. And
because
I don't
that
know.
sounded like so much fun, I'm sure.
And I don't know why I'm here now.
But I
Oh,
you are very good on camera, Peanut.
he's just given up. Okay, you can go down now. You can go back. Okay. I figured I couldn't tease the puppies and then not show the puppies.
I'm sure that our viewers are very appreciative of that. We are, I mean, in the Nest, the app that we, run everything out
Mhm.
of. We have a subgroup that's literally just pet pictures, and every day people just post pictures of their pets just going about life, you know?
Yeah.
It's
That's
that's
just, like, good for the soul. Like,
right,
when I'm having, like, a big anxiety day, I'm like, "I just need to take my dog and just,
right.
like,
Just
cuddle."
get some snuggles.
That's all we Oh, she heard me. "You coming up? You coming up?"
Another one. Oh,
Oh, she's
with a very
bringing me
nice
a
boy.
Santa. "Hey, you coming
Oh.
up?" Nope, she just wanted to bring me Santa. Okay. She wants me to throw Santa.
So now that your debut is out in the world for everyone, are you working on anything currently? Do you know what your next project will be?
I am working on something. I do know what my next project is. We have not announced it yet. So
This happens so much.
so, yes, I will have another book. It hopefully good. Um, yeah, I mean, it's the whole goal was to try to, like, give people who liked the first book something that scratches a similar itch but is different. So, it's, another, you know, mystery with a touch of the speculative, more ensemble, more multi-point of view. Not as many points of view as I'll Stop the World. Um, More of that coming of age theme, like similar themes, but very, very different story. That, once again, is just me exploring some big questions that I find interesting.
Love it. Well, I know there will be plenty of us out there who also will be intrigued by those same questions.
I hope so.
Um, we have one of our wonderful members and helpers, Kristen, loves to get signed copies of all the books that she can for the authors that we chat with.
Mhm.
Is there anywhere that readers can get signed copies of I'll Stop the World?
Yes, currently, Parnassus Books and also the Bookshop, both in Nashville, both have signed copies of I'll Stop the World. And if they run out, I have told the owners at both stores that I'm happy to come back in and sign more. So, yeah, the Bookshop and Parnassus Books, both in Nashville, both should be able to get you signed copies. Just specify if you're ordering from out of town on
Mhm.
your order, like in the comments, be like signed copy. Make her come in if you don't have any.
We will
She
hold
said
her to
on
this request.
she said on this live chat that she would do it. Like, I don't know how many characters they allow, but, like, if you wanna write them a whole letter being like, "No, really, make her come in," 'cause I think
Maybe some
she
kind of
will.
attachment to include, just, just to be safe.
A link to this entire thing, be like, "Watch this hour-long discussion in which she says that she will." But no, I have also, like, told them that, so it's not a surprise.
Awesome. Kristen will be thrilled, I know, to hear that. And then the last question that we ask all of the authors we chat with, do you have any advice for any of our viewers who might be aspiring authors themselves?
Yes. I have so much advice, but, no, my biggest thing is write for you before anyone else. Don't try to write for the market or for agents or for what you think publishing wants. Um, because at the end of the day, the only thing you can control is the words you're putting on the page, and you are your first reader. And so if you're not enjoying what you're writing, no one else is going to either. And if you are enjoying what you're writing, then you're getting something out of it, even if publishing never goes for it. And then the other big piece of advice I have for anyone seeking publication is be generous with your skill, um, in investing in other writers. Read other writers' work and offer, not just read other published books, but read other writers who are in your stage, who are working towards the same goal, and offer feedback, offer kind feedback, but, like, helpful feedback, because I have learned more from reading other writers and offering feedback on their work than I ever have from having anyone read for me. um I can't think of any time I've ever read anything, would be it published or pre-published, um, that I didn't learn something that improved my own writing. Even if it was something I hated, it's like, okay, don't do that. What am I hating about this? So I can never do that. But more often than not, it's something that a writer does well that I'm like, "Ooh, tuck that away for later. That's helpful."
I love that. That's great advice, and I love that, every time we ask this question, we get, like, a different answer.
Mhm,
It's so great, and I think that reminder of writing for yourself is especially,
mhm.
important because I feel like so many people can get caught up in I need to write for what is going to get, publishers' attention, and
Yeah,
if you're trying
and the
to.
truth is that it changes every day. It
Right.
changes all the time, and so by the time you've written the thing that was for the thing that was so big at the time, it's changed and it's not big
Yeah.
anymore, and so you might as well be enjoying it. And the other one is read. Surely everyone knows to read, but if you wanna write, you need to be reading. That's not a skippable step.
Absolutely. I would hope that here in our book club, that is something
Yeah,
everyone is.
I feel like that should go unsaid, but then every now and then you
Right.
meet a writer that's like, "I really don't read," and it's like, "Oh, you are doing yourself a disservice, my friend."
Uh-huh.
You
No
have
kidding.
like, reading is the best way to become a better writer.
Mhm. Agreed. Well, Lauren, thank you so much, for joining us tonight. It was an absolute pleasure to talk to you about, your book and
Thank you.
all things neurospicy, really. That was great.
I I love the term neurospicy. TikTok taught me that, and I am forever grateful for it. Oh, hello. She brought me
It's
snacks.
so good. I love it. And how little, one more dog cameo. I love it.
Yeah.
And thank you, members of The Nest and Words and Whimsy for being here tonight. If you want to catch our next author chat, that is happening this coming Sunday, April 23rd at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that will be with Gabrielle Savi, who is the author of Come See the Fair. Have a great rest of your night, everyone.
Thank you so much. Good night.